Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today they have announced more hero talents coming in the next expansion, the War Within, and we're going to be looking at the Restoration Druid, and that is going to be Resto Druid / Feral, which is going to be the Wildstalker. And again, if you're not familiar with hero talents, it's something that's coming in the War Within. It's going to be built on top of your existing talents and things like that, and anything is subject to change. We've seen Keepers of the Grove, which is primarily, or at least there is a certain focus on Grove Guardians and that kind of hero talent tree, and now we're seeing Wildstalker, which is substantially different, and I really want to know your opinions about. Now, there's something really important to differentiate here. In terms of thriving growth, rip and rake damage has a chance to cause Bloodseeker Vines to grow onto the victim, dealing bleed damage over 6 seconds. This is the feral portion. And then there's the resto portion, which is the wild growth, rejuvenation, and the fluorescence has a chance to cause symbiotic blooms to grow on the target, healing over 6 seconds. We're not 100% sure if Resto Druid has access to rip and rake. We're not sure, without testing it on the alpha, whether you're going to be able to proc things like Bloodseeker Vines as Restoration Druid. If you are, there's going to be definitely an incentive to cat weave with this hero build right here. But that is not 100% yet, and again guys, I want to know your opinion about this. Hopefully it does, because it adds additional value. Wild growth, rejuvenation, and fluorescence has a chance to cause symbiotic blooms. First of all, it is a chance. Symbiotic Bloom seems to be a hot that is healing over 6 seconds. Is that hot going to be working with Mastery? Is it going to be adding to Mastery? Is it going to work with Flourish? A lot of things are still relatively unknown. Now let's move on. In terms of hero talents, there's going to be a couple of choice nodes and things like that. We'll talk about this. In terms of Hunt Beneath the Open Skies, damage and healing while in cat form increased by 5%. Moonfire and Sunfire damage increased by 10%. Okay. Strategic Infusion. So I'm going to kind of focus a lot more on the resto aspects, but I'll talk about Feral a little bit because we're still not 100% sure. But casting Regrowth increases the chance for your periodic heals to critically heal by 10% for 6 seconds. Again, a lot of this tree or hero talent is very passive, and I'll talk about this at the end. Glistering for rip damage increased by 6%. Ferocious bite damage increased by 4%, rejuvenation healing is increased, and efflorescence and life bloom healing increased by 6%. Extremely passive. Again, we're assuming we're probably getting the damage portion increases, but I'm not sure if we're getting that Bloodseeker Vines as Resto Druid. Again, we'll have to see when the alpha comes out. In terms of other talents, there are a bit more. Again, we move down the list. Wild growth and rake lasts 20% longer. Okay. Entangling Vortex. Enemies pulled into Ursol's Vortex are rooted in place for 6 seconds. I think this is actually kind of interesting a little bit, because a lot of these hero talents, at least in this kind of portion, are very passive, and this is one of those talents that actually do something a little bit different. Again, situationally strong, depending on what you need. Flower Walk, this is a choice node. You have to pick one or the other, so keep that in mind. During Barskin, your movement speed is increased by 10%, and every second flowers grow beneath your feet to heal up to 3 nearby injured allies. I mean, you're not going to use Barskin purely for the healing portion of it. You're going to use Barskin if you need defensives. Bond with Nature, healing you receive is increased by 10%, or you get to choose Harmonious Constitution, which your regrowth's healing to yourself is increased by 50%. Big caveat to this. There is defensive options in these hero talent trees. When you compare the defensive options of this tree in terms of Wildstalker, and you compare it to something like the previous tree, which was Keeper of the Grove, you'll notice the Keeper of the Grove has Protective Growth, where your regrowth protects you, reducing damage you take by 8% while your regrowth is on you. So if you're comparing the damage reduction portion of Keeper of the Grove and then comparing whatever you get here in terms of healing increases, if we're looking at purely like Mythic Plus aspect, if the next expansion is going to be very similar in terms of what Season 3 is in terms of Mythic Plus. In Season 3, in terms of Mythic Plus, it's all about survivability. You're reaching 28, 29 keys, and you're going to be one-shot in a lot of these tyrannical keys. Of course, Druids have Bear Form, which is honestly insanely overpowered when it comes to these really high keys, because it prevents you from getting one-shot, but it does require you to know when to use it. How is Blizzard going to balance Mythic Plus in terms of what is going to be the concept of pushing the highest keys in the world? Is it about survivability or about dealing damage? Resilient Flourishing, this is another kind of choice node here. Bloodseeker Vines and Symbiotic Blooms last 2 additional seconds. Now, if we do get Bloodseeker Vines, when a target afflicted by Bloodseeker Vines dies, the vines jump to a nearby unaffected target for the remaining duration. So it has an additional portion if you do get Bloodseeker Vines, but we'll have to see. Now, Root Network. And I think this is an interesting one, at least a little bit. Each active Bloodseeker Vines increases the damage your abilities deal by 2%. We'll have to see if that's going to be possible. For the resto, each active symbiotic bloom increases the healing of your life bloom and wild growth by 2%. So the big thing about this, you have to remember, what is the chance? You have a chance to cause symbiotic blooms. What is the chance of this? How many can you have out in Mythic Plus? How many can you have out in like raid situations? They're going to increase the healing of your life bloom and increase the healing of your wild growth. Bursting growth. So I'm not going to really... When Bloodseeker thorns expire, they explode in thorns, dealing physical damage to nearby enemies. Damage reduced above 5 targets. Again, we're not sure if we're getting that, but if you do, I think that's going to encourage cat weaving a lot more. When Symbiotic Bloom expires, flowers grow around their target, healing them for up to 3 nearby allies. So you're pressing your Rejuvenation, Wild Growth, and Fluorescence. All of those abilities are going to be able to, again, Wild Growth, Rejuvenation, and Fluorescence, they have a chance of causing Symbiotic Blooms. Symbiotic Blooms are increasing the healing of your life bloom and wild growth, and when they expire, they're also going to heal targets around them. So it's not really... I don't think it's gameplay changing, but it does have synergy in terms of how it works. And of course, in a typical Blizzard fashion, I had the video done and ready to be shipped, and then Blizzard said, hey, we forgot a little bit of a minor... It's not a minor thing at all. Wild Growth, Regrowth, and Fluorescence have a chance to cause Symbiotic Blooms to grow on the target and not Rejuvenation. And I was going to look at things like Twin Sprouts. When Bloodseeker Vines or Symbiotic Blooms grow, they have a 10% chance to cause another growth of the same type to immediately grow on a valid nearby target. I was going to make comparisons to something like Luxurian Soil and things like that, but I'm not really going to do that right now. Again, there are comparisons to Luxurian Soil. Again, this is a choice node. You can pick Implant instead, where casting Regrowth that is made instant via Nature Swiftness causes a Symbiotic Bloom to grow on the target, which is... Again, Nature Swiftness has a relatively long cooldown. We'll have to see how the tuning is going to work, but the general consensus is that Symbiotic Blooms are relatively random. We don't know the proc chance. They seem to be proccing from Wild Growth, Regrowth, and Fluorescence, and Implant gives you a guaranteed Symbiotic Bloom on a certain target, and I think that's important. I don't really like the Nature Swiftness cooldown. And then we go down to the last talent, which is going to be really important because Symbiotic Blooms increase the healing your spells do to affected targets by 8%. So now you have this kind of synergy depending on which talents you're picking here in terms of, hey, I'm casting my abilities, I'm having a chance of spawning or proccing these Symbiotic Blooms. If you have Root Network, that's going to increase the healing of your life bloom and Wild Growth, or maybe increase the duration if you have Resilient Flourishing. And then on top of that, other choice nodes you have in terms of Twin Sprout and Implants. I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to balance Rejuvenation, because Rejuvenation right now in like Mythic Plus content needs a lot of love, especially considering that they just nerfed Rejuvenation, because right now we cannot proc Symbiotic Blooms anymore. And again, we talked about Rejuvenation in Mythic Plus content. If there are a lot of Resto Druids who are doing the highest content in the world, they don't have a lot of mastery, and they basically just don't press Rejuvenation. And I'm not sure, maybe Blizzard is fine with Rejuvenation playing a lot less part in Mythic Plus content, and in raids it plays a bigger part because you have certain talents that just work better in raids. Maybe that is fine, but guys, let me know how you feel about Rejuvenation in particular, and we'll talk about Grove Guardians later on. Please guys, don't get bogged down in terms of the tuning. There's going to be a lot of tweaks made before the War Within is going to be released, but the reason I'm talking about changing certain hero talents right now is because Symbiotic Blooms just seem to be very, very random. We don't know the proc chance. I would just like a certain way of applying, again, Symbiotic Blooms to a target. They did make Implant, which if you cast Nature Swiftness and Regrowth, the target is going to get it, but I would like something on a shorter cooldown. Again, tuning wise, we have to see how they're going to achieve that, but I would just like a little bit less RNG. I want to talk a little bit about the hero talent choice and Grove Guardians, and this is a sore subject because it has split the community. The Grove Guardian gameplay that is evident in Season 3 when it comes to Mythic Plus and raiding. Do you enjoy that type of gameplay? So when it comes down to the War Within, you have multiple options as Restoration Druid in terms of Wildstalker and the Keeper of the Grove. Now, let's assume if you pick Wildstalker and assume that you're able to proc, as Restoration Druid, you're able to proc Bloodseeker Vines. And maybe one of the reasons why you want to pick Wildstalker is because of the damage that it provides, because of the kitty weaving that it encourages. And you most likely, again, you have an option between Grove Guardians and something like Nourish, because those are the two talent choices you have right now. you're going to be picking Grove Guardians because it's going to allow you to stay in that kitty form for a little bit longer. If you want to go the other option in terms of Keeper of the Grove, in order to actually get the max benefit out of this kind of hero talent, you need to pick Grove Guardians. Should Grove Guardians have more competition when it comes to the talent tree? And I'm basically speaking here because I really want to know your opinion about the Grove Guardian gameplay. I really want to know your opinion about, again, the new talents, the hero talents, the encouragement in terms of kitty weaving, or the possible encouragement in terms of kitty weaving, the possible encouragement in Grove Guardians. Let me know. What is going to be the situation of Resto Druid in raid situations? Resto Druid in raids for the longest time ever has been either the pure HPS healer, because it doesn't really bring damage reduction, it doesn't really bring a huge amount of utility in raids. As a druid, you provide things like Battle Res and Mark of the Wild, which honestly in raid environments, it's not that hard to get or fill. When it comes to Mythic Plus, it is a different kind of story. What is going to separate Resto Druid from other healers when it comes to getting invited to the Mythic raids or World First raids? I don't see anything here right now. It's something like damage reduction. I don't see anything here that really separates Resto Druid from other healers that bring damage reduction, that bring support buffs and things like that. That's another discussion about healers and support. Is Resto Druid poised to be the HPS healer in the next expansion and only brought for its HPS if it's tuned in that way? Guys, let me know how you feel about this. Let me know what you would change in this. In my opinion, Wildstalker is a little bit bland, but if it does, again, if it does work with Bloodseeker Wines, I think that's going to be really, really interesting in something like Mythic Plus content, because I love cat weaving. Do you like cat weaving? Do you enjoy that type of DPS playstyle? Do you like Wildstalker, or do you prefer something like Keeper of the Grove, where you can have a lot more, or you go back to that Grove Guardian type of gameplay? Let me know. And again, I probably missed out on a lot of different things here, a lot of different interactions. Let me know how you feel about this. Let me know if I missed out on something. And if you like this content, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.